All right, welcome back to the Jason Gray Show. Like and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers this month. Let's go ahead and talk about the Andrew Tate interview, which was presented by Patrick Bet-David. I don't know if you know who he is. He's an incredibly good interviewer. He's not like a Joe Rogan, but he's a great interviewer. He leads into questions really well, and him and his team did the research before they got to Romania and did their interview with them. And Valuetainment and their crew did a great editing job. So I rolled into this, I was gonna watch this video, and I opened it up, and it says it's 4.5 hours long. And I'm like, wow, 4.5 hours long. I'll just watch the first 30 minutes and sort of see what's going to happen with this interview. And I got sucked into the interview, and I watched the whole 4.5 hours. It was actually a very, very good interview. I don't care if you like, hate, or indifferent in regards to Andrew Tate, but the interview itself was fascinating. And so I highly encourage you to watch it if you have some spare time while you're doing something. I think it's well worth to listen to it. And so the interview sort of goes like this. They sort of talk about his charges, what the allegations were of his charges, how his BBC interview went, and just sort of went through the whole gamut. So let's talk about the BBC interview. The BBC interview started off as really, according to him, they were begging and begging and begging him to do an interview while he was when he got out of jail, or in jail through his associates, and they kept on saying, when he gets out of jail, let's do an interview. And he kept on pushing them back, and they said, well, we'll be asking you things about your time in jail and how these things sort of happened. And then when the interviewer came on board, she went for the jugular in regards to the questions, and she was holding on to these questions and asking the same questions. He was in full denial, and it was a battle, and I really thought he won the BBC battle with that interview. They were very ill-prepared for that interview, and I think BBC is really going to hate this interview that Patrick Bet-David did with his team with Andrew Tate. When they go through and look at it and all the information they were giving, they're going to hate this interview 100%. This is going to be a bloodbath for them. So he finishes the BBC interview, and at the end of it, like a couple days later, he comes out and says, I'm no longer doing interviews with any mainstream media. I'll do like an independent person or whatnot, but if you're in the mainstream media, the only way I'll interview you is if you give $50,000 to my charity, which it sounds like he's done this charity for 10 or 15 years, in regards to he donates millions of dollars a year to feed hungry families, and I can't even remember what country it is, which I apologize. But he says, you give me $50,000, I'm cutting that money to pay for children who are hungry. And then he says, on top of it, I want some cookies and then something else. So anyways, Patrick Bet-David said, I'll bring my team there, and I'm not part of the mainstream media, but I'll still give you your $50,000 and your cookies. So he came there, first part of the interview, he gives them these cookies, and he gives them a $50,000 check, and off does the interview go. They were incredibly prepared in regards to all the questions they asked and going through his life events, his philosophies, his religion changes, all that stuff was sort of going on. So as they get through and they start asking questions about the allegations, and that no one has technically come forward in regards to any hard evidence that's going to convict him. And the BBC kept on holding on that there's this person that's gonna, that says that something happened to him, but this person doesn't exist because they never gave a real name, so he can't defend himself. It sounds like at the end of this month, it sounds like his charges, I'm hoping, are going to be dropped. And in doing so, this will probably all go away. But the way he communicates his message in regards to any questions he has, he's a highly intelligent person. And you'll get that off when you start watching like the first 10, 15, 20 minutes of the interview, where you can sort of see his processing of getting the question, answering it, and be very crystal clear about his message. And his delivery is very interesting. And he says this all stems from his childhood, of how he was raised, in regards to how his dad raised him, how his dad treated him, all stuff. And it was really a very fascinating interview. It even went through his steps of learning about God and Christianity. Then he became an atheist, and then he went into became a Muslim, and he sort of walked himself through that and how that sort of went for his life, and how God is number one, family's number two, and then everything else matters after that. But those two things are the number one, God and family. And he was talking about beliefs in regards to, a man should work out, should be successful, should treat a woman right, and go through all these sort of steps he was going through. And I think why he's so popular with young adults or young men is because his messaging, from what on surface seems totally legit. Have a good job, do the right things in life, protect people and go through. I mean, everything was really good. Now, if the allegations are true of what people are talking about, then that flips onto a completely different side, right? But his messaging, how he's coming across, is incredibly, incredibly good. So the interview itself supposedly was about 12 hours of footage. Out of that 12 hours of footage, I watched that 4.5-hour interview. There's about 45 minutes of that interview, which is held back because he's still under investigation, and they thought some of that information that was answered during that time would not be good to release during the interview process. So it sounds like that stuff will be released at a later date. And then they did an interview with his brother, which is Tate. Did an interview with him for about an hour, and then they did a bunch of be real, backstory stuff. But one thing that, Patrick Bet-David said with his team and everyone that was around him in regards to how inviting Andrew Tate was in regards to his environment, his family. He said that, even on the taxi ride there, he says, "Oh my gosh, you're going to Andrew Tate's house. We think the charges are bad." And then they walked around the cities and interviewed people. And so the perception, and he kept on talking about this is the Matrix, or this is the cabal coming after me, and all this stuff. It was honestly a truly fascinating interview. So my recommendation for you is, and hopefully you got just a little taste of the interview through this quick video here, but I really think it's worth the watch, the 4.5-hour watch. I think you watch it for the first 45 minutes, and if you're intrigued, continue on. But I think it's well worth your time. Let you be, like I said, agree with him or disagree with him, or you're a young adult or someone who's old, like myself. I'm old as dirt. But I think it's well worth the interview to watch. It's fascinating to sort of see how he communicates and how he articulates everything that he is messaging into his messages. He's highly, highly, highly intelligent, and you can sort of see that through the interview. So go ahead and like and subscribe. Hope you like this video. Leave your comments below. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.